Hello, I'm Lisa Ritchie, founder of Manners to Go, and I'm so excited to have two authors with us today. I have Sarah and Evie with us today, and they're the authors of Modern Manners for Moms and Dads, Practical Parenting Solutions for Sticky Situations. And we all know there are a lot of sticky situations out there. And so thank you so much for joining. I know my audience is going to be glued to this video to hear all of your answers. And I'd like to get started with this question because I know over the years, all the questions that I've been asked, some sticky ones and some funny ones, but what is your most common etiquette question? Sarah, you go first. What's the most common etiquette question that you get?
Well, okay, so first of all, thank you for having us on. We are so thrilled to be here. And this is just such a fun conversation. We love talking manners and sticky situations. But I would definitely say that one of our readers' favorite topics is birthday parties. We talk about birthday parties. We have so many questions. For example, how much money do I spend on a child's birthday gift? What if I'm invited to a twin party, but my child's only friends with one of the twins? Do I buy gifts for both of the children? And then if so, how much do I spend? Can I bring an uninvited sibling along? What if it's a baby? What if I don't have anybody to watch the sibling? How do I tell? And then from the other end, how do I tell somebody, no, you can't bring an uninvited sibling? How do I decide what time to have my party? Do I have to have foods for children who are allergic to nuts or allergic to dairy? Like the list goes on and on and on. Right. Do we open birthday gifts at the party? So I would say that one of the big topics that we talk about quite a bit is birthday parties.
Fantastic. Evie, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, I think birthday parties are one of the sort of extensions of formal hosting once you become a parent. I mean, all those little etiquette rules that we know before we become parents certainly apply to our day-to-day life. But when you host before kids, you might be worrying about your playlist and having your table setting just right. And then once you introduce babies or toddlers into the mix, when you're throwing kids' birthday parties, you start thinking about very different things. Things get more casual. But those basics of manners and etiquette, the kindness, the consideration for your guests, it's still there. It's just slightly different details.
Great. I love that. I'm sure you do get a lot of questions. And that is addressed in your book. Yeah. I read that. I mean, you give a lot of different scenarios on birthday parties. And that is a big part of a child's life and a very important one. It's where they learn conversation skills. They learn to separate from their parents. And so there's a lot of teachable moments during the birthday party situation. And of course, I get a lot of questions about thank you notes. And I get a lot of questions about thank you notes. Yeah. And how detailed and how etiquette-y you want to be. So
right. And how much time do you have? And are there any times you can get away with a social media thank you versus a traditional thank you? I mean, those are questions that we all have. And we call our friend and we go, hey, is it okay if I do this? And you're like, I don't know. Is it okay? Well, we're telling you it's okay. There are instances where, social media thank you is perfectly acceptable. And there are other instances where actually, no, that would actually be inappropriate. But
yes.
How do you know which ones?
And I know over the years, I've gotten a lot of questions, and of course, reading the older etiquette books on hostess gifts. Do I need to send a thank you note for hostess gifts? And, and of course, the etiquette books say, of course you should. So again, like really, that's getting a little bit, out there, but of course, you can write thank you notes for your hostess gifts. I really liked your chapter on personal grooming. I read it word for word. Yes, loved it. I think we need to talk about it. I was out to dinner. It was a situation where it was outdoor seating. And I was out to dinner on Saturday night with my husband, and I looked forward to putting on a skirt. It was really nice to get out, and it was a beautiful evening here. It was still kind of pushing in the 80s, so it was absolutely lovely. I was a little surprised. People were a little casual, even more so than usual. And we all are different circumstances. Some of us are working from home more than ever. We have children. Some of us have worked from home for a really long time. Give me your thoughts on it, on personal. I did read the chapter. I know your thoughts on it, but let's tell our audience.
I'm going to give this one straight to Evie because she loves this stuff.
Okay, I'll go for it.
So I will start by saying that I come from a long line of feminist thought. So writing this chapter was difficult for me because at my core, I have a problem with people telling women how to dress. So
Mhm.
I wanted to really approach this chapter on personal appearance from through the lens of when you present yourself well, when you present yourself as your best self going out into the world, you are doing it for you. You are doing it to show your self respect. You're doing it for your own mental health because studies show that when we care for ourselves, it comes through in our mental health. And you're doing it to show your kids that you are a priority in your life.
Mhm.
Because if you always set yourself last, if you send your kids off to school with bows in their hair and nicely pressed clothes and looking polished like they're ready for a magazine ad, but you haven't set aside any time for yourself, and so you're showing up in your pajamas and your bathrobe, the message that you're sending to your kids is, I am not really that important. I don't get to set aside time for myself. And there are seasons in life when that is the way things go. If you have a new baby in the family, if, God forbid, there's a death in the family or illness, you do set those things aside. But as a rule, on a day-to-day basis, we cannot put ourselves last. And it's good for our kids to see us take care of ourselves and our physical appearance to show that we want to be our best selves when we go out into the world. So we know from talking with our readers and our podcast listeners and even our coaching clients that when they put in that little bit of extra effort, it really does have an impact on the way you feel about yourself. And self-care is really the basis of all of the etiquette advice that we give, the parenting advice that we give. Because if you're not taking care of yourself, if you're not feeling sane and whole, you can't be thinking about your child's needs. You can't be empathetic toward them. You will not have the patience to handle their temper tantrum. And you certainly will not be thinking about those finer details of manners and etiquette.
Mhm. I couldn't have said it better myself. I agree
Thank
with you 100%, everything you said. Sarah, would you
you.
like to add anything to that?
As I said, this is she always articulates this so well.
Mhm.
No, except that I would say that this isn't about, you must put on makeup every day, you must wear a skirt every day. This is about finding what's comfortable for you, but hitting black and whites that are really important. Like you must shower, you must brush your teeth and your hair, you must put on an outfit. And those, some people may think, oh my gosh, why are they telling me that when I have 3 children under the age of 5, I need to go to the grocery store and make sure I have lipstick on? We're not. We're not.
Mhm.
We would never tell a mom or a dad that they need to get themselves all gussied up to go to the grocery store. However, we do think you should be clean, and you should have on clothes that are not pajamas,
Yes.
because that's important for you and for your self-esteem and for your self-confidence. And it also sets a really good example for your kids that, like, hey, I'm important too, and I have, I'm important too, and I should be a priority in this family, which a lot of parents kind of forget.
I'm concerned that the pajama trend is not going away anytime soon. Even before COVID, I was flying a great deal and traveling, and I was just shocked how many people would show up for flights with pajama bottoms on them,
Mhm.
and their kids dressed the same way. This is shocking, shocking. So I'm a big believer in dressing, even in a home office environment. My husband kind of laughs at me sometimes. I'll walk in with, we call them hard shoes, and the dog gets upset because she's afraid I'm really leaving. But it does do something with your mind when you are dressed. And I think my sister is a retired principal, and I remember many years she talked about picture day, and she said the behaviors in children on picture day is so different than every other day.
Ah,
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to see some research on that.
I know, this is yes, she was a principal in rural South Carolina. And she
Mhm.
would make that, she would talk about that, how different it was.
Well,
Um,
what you're saying about putting on the hard shoes or, getting dressed up and the way it makes us feel, there's research to support that too. And the term that social psychologists use is stimulus control, that if we are normally accustomed to getting up and getting dressed as part of our day-to-day routine, even when we're learning at home rather than going to our school building, or even when we're working from home rather than going to the office, getting up and getting dressed prepares our brain for those same activities that we would have done in another environment. So it's not our imagination. It really is important.
Really is important. I was the past few weeks I've been working with some universities doing some virtual training with them for juniors and seniors, and I remember just speaking with both universities, both those that were representing the career office. They said, "Which could you please talk about the importance of dressing for a Zoom call, whether it's just for class or whether it's an interview, because many of these students are having to do their job interviews virtually, and the importance of the whole body needs to be dressed." I was a little shocked that I needed to address that, but the whole body needs to be dressed. You never know when you're going to have to stand up. So,
Right.
yeah.
Well, Zoom etiquette was something that we touched on right in the very beginning. We talked a lot about this in our Facebook group. We have a Facebook group called Talking Modern Manners for Moms and Dads. And we talked a lot about what is this going to look like when these kids go to school on a Zoom call? What do they need to be doing to show respect for their teacher? It's funny, my son today had a hood on. I walked in, he's in 5th grade, had a hood on. And I said, "You got to take your hood off." And he said, "Why?" And I said, "Well, because you wouldn't be wearing a hood if you were at school. Let's take your hood off." And he did. But, it's just one of those things we don't think, because we're in our own house, we're comfortable, so we might just, kind of get cozy up in a blanket. It's like, well, no, what are you doing? You're at school.
You're going to school. I know, exactly. I also enjoyed your chapter on social media, and I have to tell you, this was a vivid picture in my mind. I follow a popular chef in New York City, and he's very excited. He has a newborn, and it's a son, and he videoed this child without a diaper on. And he told this funny story, and it was a funny story, but inside I was thinking, oh my goodness, you know where I'm going with this, and I loved that you give the advice to parents to just step back and ask some very important questions. So let's talk about that. What is the first question that a parent should ask themselves before asking or before posting some of these videos and in sticky situations with their children? It's funny, and it's a beautiful moment in some cases. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that social media presents us with a wonderfully intricate double-edged sword. We have an opportunity. We have an opportunity to have information at our fingertips, to have a support system, to be able to share with family and friends far away, to be able to feel like we're not alone, especially during COVID, where we might be staying home a lot more. We're getting that validation that's really important for parents. And so social media is a wonderful tool. But for me, and what we said in the book was, if you would not be comfortable with this being a picture of yourself doing what you're about to put on social media, don't put it up there. So for example, if your child is on the toilet and you're celebrating toilet training, would you be comfortable if your spouse took a picture of you on the toilet and posted it on social media? You wouldn't? Oh, well, we probably shouldn't put it up of your child. I think there is this idea of like, oh, well, they're just 2 years old. They don't know. Well, they don't know now, but what happens in 10 years when they find it? And they're like, wait a minute, you took a picture of me screaming or crying, or I was so upset about something. You took a video and you put it on this social media channel and people were watching. Like, I mean, my goodness, if someone did that to you, if you were feeling very upset and vulnerable and crying or yelling or having a really bad moment, and somebody videotaped you and put it up for everyone to see, you'd be devastated, angry, heartbroken. And so that's sort of the angle we are coming at it, where yes, of course you will want to share things, but just think twice of, is this going to be okay if my child sees this in 10 years? Is my child going to be okay with this photo? And then there's the issue of consent. How old are our children when we start to ask them, hey, can I put this photo on here of you, knowing that this will be the consequence? When do we start talking to them about that, knowing that we don't want them to do things for all that external validation and likes so early on in their childhood? If we tell a 5-year-old, hey, can I put this up on social media and we'll see what everybody thinks about it? And, and then you share all that with your child, is then going to start to say, hey, can you put it up, put it up, put it up? And do we want that so early? It's very intricate and complicated. And the social media chapter, like all the others, has tons of research, about the choices that we make and the possible unintended consequences, both positive and negative.
Right. Would you like to add anything to that, Effie?
Well, what I wanted to add was that that chapter is emblematic of the way of what we say about this book, which is this is not your grandmother's etiquette, which is
Mhm.
not to say that all of the old fashioned etiquette needs to go by the wayside.